Hello and welcome back. I'm Sarah Mueller, a reporter with Forbes, and today I am joined by Sean McLaughlin, otherwise known as Jacksepticeye on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's awesome.
Well, I want to read off your resume because it's quite lengthy. Over the past more than 10 years on YouTube, you've amassed more than 30 million subscribers. It's landed you on the Forbes top creators list, the Forbes top influencers list, and you were also listed as a Forbes 30 under 30 lister for gaming in 2020. Now, you also have a coffee brand called Top of the Morning Coffee, which not only boasts being ethically and sustainably sourced, but also gives back to mental health crisis lines, which is incredible. And if that's not enough, you have a podcast and a comic book series. So that is a lot to dive into just in this conversation. So let's get started with your YouTube career. Did you ever have another career in mind, or how did you decide to upload that very first video?
Oh God, no, I had no backup plan. I was miserable alone in a log cabin in the middle of the woods, and I was like, I don't know what else to do with my time and my life. And I was watching other people do YouTube, and I thought that that was cool, and I was like, I'll try it out because I was always kind of like the young one at the table when I was in my family and like making jokes and cracking jokes at everybody and making everyone laugh. So I was like, maybe I can do something with that, and just started recording. I guess out of boredom more than anything, I started. I didn't really have a plan for it. Didn't think it would be a job. Didn't think it would turn into anything. I was like, I'll try it out. Editing seems fun. Manufacturing content like that seems fun. The whole process of it, and I really didn't have anything else in mind of what I would do. I would hope that I'd be somewhere in film or sound design or something like that. I think I always kind of leaned towards media like that. So probably somewhere there, but this is way better.
Yeah, what was the moment that you realized this is no longer a hobby, this is now my career?
Funnily enough, it was on my way back from college one day. My mother had picked me up and we were driving back, and she went in to get groceries, and I was sitting in the car and I got like my first ever payment from YouTube, which was like, I think it was like $50 at the time, or like €50 because I was living in Ireland. And I was like, whoa, I actually made something off of this. This is cool. Now I can buy like a decent microphone. And it was like a couple of paychecks after that that it started to like grow a tiny bit more. And it was the first time I got like, I think it was like $3,000 from YouTube. And I was like, I can afford to live not at home anymore. And I can afford to go out and pay rent and live somewhere else. And this is like a feasible job. And I can actually earn this much a month. And I was like, I'll see how far it goes and how much I can make out of this. But at the time, I was like, I'm just going to take it and see what happens.
I've always wondered, as somebody who does love to game as well, how do you decide what you're going to do for your channel versus what you're just going to enjoy privately and just do on your own time? I mean, it's kind of weird mixing a hobby with a career.
Yeah, it gets a bit tricky because I know a lot of people who do the same stuff, like friends of mine who do gaming, and they don't really game in their spare time anymore because either everything goes up on YouTube and they don't have time, or they've kind of lost that interest in gaming privately because doing it as your job does kind of take away from the hobby for a lot of people. But for me, I just love games a lot. I think I would just be playing games constantly, even if I wasn't doing them as my career. And I think whichever ones I pick, it used to be I just played everything and anything because I was doing nonstop content all the time, like 5 years ago. These days, there are certain games that come out, like an Alan Wake 2 will come out, and I'm like, I waited 13 years for the sequel of this. I kind of want to keep it for myself and not have to perform or have an audience kind of like give feedback on it, or kind of have to think about outside influences outside of myself. But other things are just easy, like a From Software game, or like Elden Ring DLC is coming out and I want to play that for my channel and things like that. It just kind of depends. I can tell what my audience are into and what they like. And horror games are always an easy shout for anybody. So I just kind of pick and choose and see what happens.
Um, you've been on YouTube for over a decade now. That's something you addressed in your video last week. What are some of the most like potent changes that you have experienced over those 10 years dealing with a platform? I mean, I work in social media as well, and it just feels like now algorithms. It's like we're guessing on algorithms every couple of months, and you've got to roll with all these punches that you don't even know what they are. So how do you? I guess what have you seen in those 10 years?
It's interesting because it kind of swings back and forth all the time. When I started, everything was very edited and people were trying to go from YouTube to Hollywood a lot, and there was a lot more production that people were doing, and sketch comedy was really big. So people were definitely trying to do different things. And then when gaming sort of took off in my generation of doing YouTube, I think things kind of swung in a different direction where it was just people in their bedrooms with very little production value, and you were just playing a game, and sometimes for just 10 minutes at a time, which is just uh, it's so crazy to think about now. I'm uploading like Dark Souls that's 6 hours long. And back in the day, you would be able to upload like one episode of a game that was 10 minutes long, and then be like, okay, see you tomorrow. And people were fine with that. So I think in terms of the production qualities, those have skyrocketed. There's so many more people now that do it who start with editors, they start with thumbnail designers. People are more in tune with what the system is doing. There's certain like templates or certain things you can kind of do to make the algorithm sort of bend a little more towards your favor. Whereas when I started, everything was a lot more nebulous. The algorithm was there, but it was just kind of hiding in the background. You didn't really have to think about it. If stuff clicked, it was great. But most times everything kind of went out to your subscribers anyway. But nowadays everything's a bit more pick and choosy with the way things go out. Like, I'm not sure if my content will go out to every single subscriber. I'm not sure if it'll be picked up by the homepage. I'm not sure, like swearing, censors, uh, advertising, all of that stuff has kind of changed over the years to make it a bit more, I don't want to say corporate, but it's a bit more business focused. A lot more people now know it's a job. They know they can get into it to make money. Whereas when I started, I didn't really, it was kind of on the cusp of starting to become a job for everybody. But it wasn't as well known as it is now. But now kids want to be YouTubers as their main thing when they grow up, which is really cool to see. It's cool to be kind of at the forefront of that back in the day, and now kind of pioneering content to bring it to new people who are now able to do it as a full-time job and just try it out. And you don't really need much to get started.
Yeah, and I can confess that as I sit down and watch a YouTube video, I'll see like 6 hours on the Bloodborne video, and I'll think, I'm not gonna sit here and watch this for 6 hours. And guess what? 6 hours later, I'm still watching it. It's like a dark hole you just go into, and you're like, oh, it's been 6 hours. So last week you uploaded a video because rumors were spreading about whether or not you were going to retire, and you said,
Yeah.
"I'm not retiring yet, but someday I will." You also address a lot of your mental health struggles, how you've kind of worked through those. You were super transparent, and I mean, like I said, you've been doing this for over 10 years. And when we talk to entrepreneurs and creators and we ask them, what's your advice to people coming into the career? Typically, a lot of them say, oh, know that your career is not going to be linear. It's going to have ups and downs, right? And so I think it's interesting that you're talking about this because even 10 years down the line, you are having a non-linear career path. So can you talk a little bit about how that's happened for you?
Yeah, it's kind of weird because there's no sort of handbook for it. There's no training. There's no like I was just a guy in my bedroom playing games for most of it, and I didn't even really have friends outside of it. So you kind of have to learn as you go. And I was very fortunate that my channel grew so quickly around like 2016-ish. But at that same time, it got really scary, and I'm a very anxious person on a day-to-day basis, and like dealing with depression and things like that. And kind of second guessing myself at every turn of life in general, not just for my content, but also with anything I do. And then having that many eyeballs kind of put upon you, and that much feedback, and that many people kind of seeing who you are. Because when I do content, my personality and my content is kind of merged. It's kind of the same thing. Like, my personality is the product. There are plenty of channels that don't do that, but for me, I didn't really have a barrier, and it was kind of hard for me to learn how to deal with people and how to deal with that feedback. And I would always kind of buckle and bend to whatever social media was saying or what people in the comments were saying, and believe everything that people were saying about me, because I'm like, well, you're seeing a version of me and I don't know what I'm like. So it was a lot of learning in that front. And I think the older I got, the better I got at kind of putting up my walls and putting up my boundaries and saying like, hey, this is not okay. We can still have fun, but you're not allowed to encroach upon my personal space and my personal life. And thankfully, the audience got very responsive to that. They were very positive about that. And I think nowadays it's a lot more normalized that, yeah, don't go poking into people's private lives when you see them online. They're, just because you see them every day doesn't mean you actually know them. But I think in that learning curve, it was very tricky for me because I don't know, I overthink everything I'm doing. I second guess everything I'm doing. So to try and navigate that at the same time was quite tricky. And I think it's kind of interesting that if anybody was doing a job for 10 years, you'd be surprised by it. Like anybody doing the exact same job for 10 years, there's no like promotions or demotions or anything. I'm my own boss. I can do whatever I want. So I think it's also difficult to figure out how to navigate away from that to keep your creativity flowing. And that's why I was attracted to this job in the first place. So that's why I'm doing things like coffee books, comic books and coffee at the same time, and just trying to like flex my creative muscles in a different way and try not to get bored with what I'm doing. I think when you start getting complacent with it, the creativity kind of goes and you start getting exhausted by just regular stuff. So I'm trying to avoid that. But yeah, it's been, some people are able to power through it. I don't think I have that personality type. I do one thing and I try and do that well. I'm very bad at splitting my attention across multiple different things and doing them all incredibly. So that's why I've said that I probably have like 2 years left in me where I'm like, I've been doing this a long time the exact same way. I'll change it somehow. I'll try something different. I'll go in a different direction. I'll always be creative and bring the audience with me. But the way I do it right now, I'm like, I'm pretty sure I've done about as much as I can with the type of content that I do right now, at least for me personally.
Yeah, I think what's interesting there is that you said, you know, we'd be surprised if we saw anybody in this career field for 10 years, especially in our current job market, right?
Yeah.
Like we're flipping, as somebody who works for a company, you know, we're flipping jobs 2 to 3 years. You know, that's common.
Yeah.
10 years is a dedication. And I appreciate you bringing out that kind of 2 year mark that you have in your head, because you said that in the video as well. But you said it was pretty close to retirement when you sent out that tweet about being interested in retiring. So what kind of pulled you back from that little edge?
I think because it's easy to be like, I'm kind of tired of the way I'm doing things now. And it's easy to just be like, I'll go do something else and not upload anymore. But I kept thinking about it. I'm like, well, I don't really want to just leave the audience. I don't want to abandon people. And I don't want to, I still enjoy it, but it was me trying to figure out how to enjoy it again because I had just gotten so it got so repetitive and it was easy to just sit down and record a let's play and just pick a game and go. But I didn't really want it to be that way anymore. I didn't want it to be monotonous and just by the numbers. So I think just taking a step back, realizing what I wanted to do, which was just longer content, played the types of games that I like Dark Souls and Bloodborne and Elden Ring, and really focus on the things that kind of filled my creative well a bit more. Instead of just being like throwing my hands in the air and walking home with my ball, like just actually give it another shot and figure out what else I want to do with it and keep the audience engaged and excited. And I have so many other things on going on at the same time that it was hard for me to still break that mentality of like, okay, every day a video, every day a game. And that goes all the way back to when I started, which was 2 videos every day. And then it went down to 1 video every day. And now it's 1 video whenever I can, because I have so many other plates that I'm spinning at the same time. So I think just giving myself a bit of slack instead of, I have a very all or nothing personality, which my therapist loves pointing out to me, that I either go 100% on something or 0%. And I'm trying to kind of like change that and realize that it doesn't have to be all or nothing all the time.
Yeah, and you talk about those spinning plates. I want to transition quickly to your to your coffee business. I mean, top of the morning coffee. If anybody watches you, they know you intro your videos with top of the morning. And so, I mean, it's a natural, it was a perfect name for a coffee company. So when you talk about it, it makes sense. But tell me a little bit about why you got interested in that and how that transition from going from a creator to now creating a business in coffee.
Yeah, I just wanted to do something that wasn't like everybody at the time was doing merch and doing clothing and doing different things like that. And I was like, there's other avenues that we can go down. And I always loved coffee. It's weird because Alan Wake was the reason I started drinking coffee in the first place, the first game. And now Alan Wake 2 is out and I got to hang out with the creator of it and drink coffee with him. So it came full circle. But I always just kind of loved coffee in general. I liked drinking it. I just loved everything about it. I loved learning about it. And then as soon as I came up with the name, me and my manager were sitting down at VidCon at the last one I was at actually, and I thought of the name Top of the Morning Coffee, and it just clicked in my head. I was like, that's the most perfect name for coffee. And I like did a quick Google search and couldn't find any. And then we went off and we searched like trademarks and copyrights and everything. It was like, no one has claimed this. Why hasn't anybody claimed this? And it just seemed so perfect that everything sort of fell in place. And then learning how coffee was made and learning, like doing the taste tests for different things was really fun to do. So it was just a fun endeavor for me. And I thought we can at least do something that like we're not going to be in debt to, but I like being able to do something that was just, it was something I hadn't done. It was a space that I wasn't in. I didn't see any other YouTubers kind of do bigger companies like this instead of just, hey, I played a game, here's a catchphrase from that on a t-shirt, which was fine for the time, but I just wanted to do a bit more and try it out and see how it went. And thankfully it's been very successful. So I'm very happy that people enjoy coffee.
But it's more than the coffee too, right? You've got the sustainability aspect and you've got the mental health aspect. And so kind of talk me through how you made a holistic approach to your business plan.
It was just kind of looking at, I've always sort of had people in mind whenever I do anything. I was always good at sort of empathizing with my audience. And when I would go out on tour, you'd see so many different walks of life or at a convention. So I was always very well aware of my audience, who they were, sort of age groups, and knowing what it was like to be a viewer of YouTube and kind of be in a hole in my life and not really have anything else going on. And I didn't know where to go or what to do. I always just kind of think about those things. And when I make anything, I'm like, well, I'm not going to make something just to turn a profit really quickly and pull the wool over people's eyes and try and do something that I myself wouldn't support. So it's the same with any sort of brand deals I do. I always manage to pick things that I believe in or that I would use or that I would do myself. So with coffee, I wanted it to be the same way. I wanted to make sure that I was still aware of people's mental health, that we had a charitable aspect to it that we gave back to, and it wasn't all just take for me all the time. And when it comes to making coffee and getting people into coffee, it kind of felt like the coffee industry itself was a bit, it was a bit kind of elitist. Like a lot of coffee stuff is very like, you need the fanciest equipment and you need the best coffee and the tasting notes of coffee. You need to know what you're doing. And I'm like, it doesn't need to be that complicated. Like we can make really good coffee and get it in people's hands without having to have all the fluff around of it. So that was really important to me whenever we were making it, to because other people saw me talk about coffee and then they were like, I want to get into coffee. What do I do? So I was like, let's bridge that gap. People who don't really know coffee or don't drink it, maybe we can get you some really, really good coffee and put that in your hands and hopefully create some people who keep wanting coffee all the time.
Well, I've been a journalist for over 10 years now and I still don't drink coffee. So maybe I need to give yours a shot. Maybe that's the
Don't know how that's possible, how you can wake up and not drink coffee in the morning.
No, I have a cat that wakes me up instead. So transitioning now to your other business venture, when Forbes spoke to you about a year ago, you said that you'd be interested in starting a comic book series. Here we are a year later. You've got your own comic book series. What, and in your last video, you even talked about wanting to write a novel. So what interests you in the publishing world that you feel like your creative cup will be filled there?
I don't know. It's just cool. I mean, look at them. They're awesome.
They're great art.
I like stories. I think that's why I'm always attracted to video games. I like the worlds. I like the world building. I like the lore, the characters. I'm a huge fan of Lost. That was my favorite TV show. That was my Roman Empire when I was growing up. So I always liked making stuff that got people talking and theorizing. And I was kind of doing that in my videos with different characters that the audience had kind of taken a liking to and kind of developed themselves, and just legitimizing those and creating the world. People had been so hungry for like official story and official lore of what was going on with these characters. So kind of putting my stamp on it to be like, this is where they started and this is where they're going, and seeing the characters interact with each other is a very big goal of mine. And it's just, again, it's like the coffee, where it's something that I've always wanted to do, but never really took the step to do. Um, and it always seemed kind of intimidating, but now it's just kind of a fun playground to jump into. And kind of, I just like creating stories and worlds for people to get lost in, because that's what I enjoy the most.
So give us a little teaser. If you wrote a novel, like
Mm.
what would be the concept? Would it be totally different from what you're writing with the comic books, or would it be on the same track, or what are you thinking?
I think because I'm a big fan of sci-fi and fantasy, I think those are like my two favorite genres. I think the comic books and the stories we're doing there are kind of more leaning towards sci-fi. I think if I was to write a novel, I think it would probably be a fantasy thing. I'm just a big fan of like Lord of the Rings, Dark Souls, Shadow of the Colossus. All of those things have such big, rich worlds. I've been reading Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive right now, so I'm a big fantasy nerd in general. So I just like that, like Warhammer 40K, like the universe is there. It's cool to be able to create worlds and have people sort of get lost in them. And if it goes nowhere, that's fine, because I like I'm lucky enough that I get to try stuff out. There's an audience there to kind of test stuff.
Mhm.
And we can all just kind of have fun together and not have to worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm in the Dune world right now, so I totally get what you're talking about. It's so immersive. So, tell us what's next for you. What's on your radar next? What can your fans, your subscribers, followers see from you coming up in the next 6 to 12 months?
A lot more FromSoft games on my channel, because I have to get through every single one of them in one video at some point. That is my mission for the end of the year. Other than that, I think we have a lot of coffee stuff coming out. We have a lot of new flavors. We have decaf coming out. We have matcha that we're testing. So we're always kind of like pushing the boat out with that, what people want, kind of teasing them with different limited flavors. If they like them, then we can bring them back. And in terms of this, we have a lot more story to tell in the comic books. I have other stories in that universe that I want to tell. I would love to be able to make some sort of animated show or TV show based on these characters at some point in the future. And I have other stuff that's secret, and I hate when YouTubers do this, because we always have like, oh, I soon TM. Like, I have something that I'm working on, but I can't talk about it. But if they do go ahead, it'll be very exciting for what I get to do in the future. And I think I'm kind of like setting up the building blocks of creative projects that I get to do, so people can follow me in a lot of different paths if they want to.
That's awesome. Now, before I let you go, I want to go through some rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Always.
Okay, what was your morning coffee order today?
A skim milk latte.
What is something you will always splurge your money on?
Uh, Something got to do with my pillows or my mattress.
Well, you do spend like a third of your life on those things.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm
So,
old.
what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Uh, my inner happiness should come from me and not from external sources, because those are variable and can change, and inner happiness is the most sustainable form.
Excellent. Who's someone you want to collaborate with that you haven't yet?
Ooh, that I haven't yet. Oh God, that's a very good question. Oh, Hidetaki Miyazaki from FromSoft. It'll never, ever, ever happen. But if there was ever somebody, it would be him.
This is the ask right now.
Yeah.
What's your favorite Chillazart game?
The one where you're a coffee barista. I can't remember the name of it, but I feel like that was the best accumulation of what they do.
Yes. Bloodborne is your favorite game. I'm a gamer as well. Sell it to me in 3 words.
Uh, Hill Moon God.
Say less. Say less. Hey, thank you so much, Sean, for your time. We appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.